Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. We are here in our brand new studio, our first webinar live that we've done in our new studio, and we're really excited to have y'all here. Today, we're going to be talking about fraud and scams, which is unfortunately something that is so common today and it affects so many people. And we're going to be talking about how they're changing in today's landscape, things to watch out for, and most importantly, what you can do to help yourself stay aware and be mindful and protect yourself and your money. So my name is Audrey. I'm the digital media specialist here at Shell FCU, and I am joined today by Rodrigo Avila. He is the fraud supervisor here at Shell FCU, and he's going to be walking us through some of the common scams affecting consumers today and the warning signs that you should be looking out for if unfortunately you were ever reached out to by a scammer. So our goal is to help you recognize the scams, know when something doesn't feel right, and understand what to do before taking any action. Rodrigo, thank you so much for joining us today.
Audrey, thank you very much for the invitation. And, I'm excited. I'm excited anytime we talk about fraud because it's an opportunity to, share information. Information is always good to help, right, protect the accounts and just to see where this goes. So, like Audrey said, thank you. My name is Rodrigo Avila, and, I'm excited. I'm excited to kind of go on and talk about some of these scams that we're seeing today. There's quite a bit, obviously, with the AI craze that's been going on and just the increase. It's impacted almost every sector of what you would call the fraud world. And I think that sharing information and giving you details about how these scams work and how the fraudsters operate can help you, right, keep your accounts protected, but not just for yourself, right, for your kids, for your family members, and whether you have an account here at Shell or not. This information can help you all across your accounts. So if you're a business owner, right, there's valuable information here that can help you protect that business. So yeah, I'm excited.
Awesome. Okay, as we go through today, if you have any questions at all that you think of, be sure to drop them in the chat for us. We will be spending a little bit of time at the end answering your questions. And let's just jump right in. So we're going to start with a scam that can unfortunately be especially convincing because the person that is contacting you is pretending to be someone that you should be able to trust the most, which is your credit union. So can you please walk us through how a credit union impersonation typically works?
Absolutely. So credit union impersonation, right? Financial institution impersonation, it's actually very big. According to the FTC records for 2025, it actually accounts for over $1 billion in losses. And got to keep in mind that only about 10% of fraud actually gets, you know, reported to the FTC. So I think it's one of those things where it's important to talk about how it works and how it processes. So typically, what scammers do is they'll contact you, they'll contact the credit union from the credit union, and they'll reach out to you via a phone call, via a text message, via an email, and they'll say, "Hey, I'm calling from Shell Federal Credit Union," whether it's the security department or the fraud department, and they will try to get you to give them information right out of the bat. So usually there's a lot of urgency involved, and they'll say, "Hey, right, I'm calling, your account is compromised, and in order for me to get, right, secure that account, I need you to give me, right, your account information or your online
Mm,
banking information." So they're pretending to be the credit union, they're pretending to be the people that are safeguarding your accounts
mm,
in order to kind of get access to that account. There's usually a second part of that, that their ultimate goal is to try to get money to go outside, right? They're
mhm.
trying to get the money to either go to a safe account, or they're trying to get money to go to one of their accounts that they've already established. But the idea and the primary thing that they're trying to do is they're impersonating Shell. In this case, we're Shell, but it could be any FI, to try to deceive you into giving them personal information. So that's usually how it works, right? So an example I can give you to perhaps put this into a little bit more simple perspective would be, you get a text from someone claiming to be the fraud department, and they're saying, "Hey, there's suspicious activity. There's a transaction that we saw at Best Buy," right? You thinking like, "Hey, I didn't go to Best Buy. Maybe my account, my card got hacked," right? There's a sense of urgency there.
Mhm.
So in the moment you kind of get that tunnel vision, you stop kind of thinking about all your security features, and you're like, hey, you know what? Yes, here you go. Here's my information. I want you to protect my account.
Yeah.
So they've manufactured a transaction that perhaps never even processed on your account,
Mm.
and they were able to get that login information. So there's usually a sense of urgency, right? If they contact you out of the blue, that's right. One of the red flags. But there's the key is sense of urgency. They're trying to move through that phone call, through that text in a very fast manner.
Yeah, and that's especially hard because I think that they're able to sound so professional and they're
Mhm.
able to sound so convincing on the phone with you, and they are relying on that sense of urgency. We definitely, I mean, I know that I've had legitimate, fraudulent charges on my account before, and it makes you panic a little bit. And so they're really preying on that panic and that sense of urgency. So what are some red flags that should make someone, stop and question whether the person that is contacting them is actually from their financial institution?
So I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
What are some red flags? Like
So
it,
red flags. So red flags, as far as what you're gonna get, is gonna be that urgency.
yeah.
That urgency is gonna be, hey, if they're calling you out of the blue and they're saying, hey, you know what, you got a transaction, you're not aware of it,
Hmm.
that's a red flag. Urgency is going to be another red flag, where we're trying to get through this really fast.
Yeah.
But if the caller also discourages you from hanging up, right? If you're on the
Hmm.
phone with them and you're like, hey, I don't know, something sounds fishy, something's off. I need to maybe call the bank, call you back, or let me check my account, right? That would be a natural reaction. If they're pushing for you to be like, no, if you hang this phone up, you're going to lose your money, that
Mm.
is a red flag, right?
Okay.
Because anyone would, if you're calling Shell Federal Credit Union and we're talking to you, we're going to want you to see your own account. We would expect that you have that awareness.
Yeah.
But if they're pressing on, no, don't end this call, if they're threatening you through a text message saying that if you don't agree or if you don't give them that information, right, the police is going to knock on your door, your
Mm.
information's going to be gone, a hacker's going to take it, right? Those are all red flags that, kind of take you to that you should kind of pinpoint and say, okay, something's here. The biggest thing is hanging the phone up, stopping communication with them via text message or email, and calling the institution, right? Calling the
Mm.
number on the back of the card, calling our number directly. You can find it on the website. So those would be red flags and things that you can do to protect yourself.
Yeah. So basically, from what I understand, you're saying that if you should always feel comfortable contacting your financial institution
Absolutely.
directly, if something feels a little bit off.
Absolutely, yes.
So one thing that a scammer may ask for during a conversation like that can bring us into our next topic, which is verification codes. A lot of us, we probably receive those verification codes when we're logging into an account or we're confirming our identity somewhere online. But how can scammers use those verification codes as part of a scam?
So verification codes could be used in many ways, right? So typically when you get one of those verification codes, they are what they're trying to do. The verification code in itself can have a link attached to it on the text message. And that in itself, when you press it and you go through it, right, you could be giving the scammer access to your accounts,
Mm.
right? So there's a malware that's attached to those links. Now, typically what they do, and what we have to understand with verification codes, is that unfortunately a lot of the data that our data, whether it's phone numbers, email addresses, even social security numbers, that's already readily available in places like the dark web,
Mm.
places like, just online, due to data breaches. It could be a data breach. It could be, right, maybe we left something unattended, an email address that wasn't correctly protected. So they were able to kind of hack into the email, and then they were able to extract everything from it.
Mm.
So most of people's data already lives somewhere. It's an unfortunate reality. It's an unfortunate truth. So if the scammers already have certain pieces of information like your phone number,
Mhm.
it's not hard for them to then compile a list of phone numbers and then mass text a security email that says, right, verification code due to potential scam. So the moment that you enter that verification code in that link, you're thinking my account got hacked, but that malware is then accessing your account to when they're then able to go in and actually log into your account and transact
Okay.
or move money around, which is part of what that verification code scam involves.
Oh, okay. Okay. So if you receive a verification code that you didn't request, then that's something that you should stop and pay attention to.
Yes. It's not to say that verification codes aren't sent from legitimate businesses, right?
Mm.
And we use that even to identify and verify accounts. But there's a difference between, right, you calling the credit union and saying, hey, I need to access my account, receiving a code so that you can verify that account, to receiving an unwarranted text message claiming your account. And right, usually these codes specifically say don't read this code to anyone, or code only for you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Don't share this with anyone. So if you receive that code and all of a sudden you're getting a phone call from a security team, from a fraud team at a financial institution, and they're saying, hey, your account is hacked, you just got a code, we need that back, that would be the difference between a legitimate and one that's not so legitimate, where
Okay.
you might want to pause the transaction and call your bank. Never hurts. Call the institution, call us, and say, hey, I got a code, it's saying here that it's Shell, did you send me a code, right?
Yeah.
The fraud team, the team that will review your account will assist in verifying if they did
Yeah.
provide that.
Okay, so a warning sign would be something kind of like, I received this code, I didn't ask for it, but now someone's asking for it. And then, like you said, the action that we should take then would be to call your financial institution. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Pause and call the institution, right?
Awesome.
Whether it's Shell, whether it's anyone, pause and verifying the source, right?
Mm-hmm.
We get text messages all day. I was preparing for this, right, where we were talking, and I was looking. I said, let me check my email, and I went to the junk box, the junk inbox, and I have a lot of emails on that particular email address, and probably like the fifth one down, there was one saying payment process. It was for $217, and I'm like, I know this is fake.
Yeah.
And I looked at the source, the email address source, and it was some brand. I can't even remember, so many letters in it. Right? It's just a scam.
Yeah.
It's one of those phishing emails. And then on the bottom it said McAfee. Nowhere on the email did it say McAfee, but on the bottom it said McAfee. And that was
Oh.
just one of those where they try to convince you and get you to call the security. That happens all day, right?
Yeah.
It happens to me. It happened right before here. So imagine all the text messages that people get.
Yeah.
It happens. So just making sure you pause, call the institution, or verify directly with the company. And if you don't do business with the text messages you're getting, then that should be an even red flag, right?
Yeah.
Hey,
You're like, I've
I
never seen this before.
yeah.
Yeah.
Most people know where they go and transact.
Yeah.
So if you get a verification code because your account or a transaction processed at Best Buy and you haven't gone to Best Buy in the last, month,
Yeah.
then there's something there that maybe you should just call the institution and verify.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So let's move on to our next scam, which is, a move your money to keep it safe scam. So in something like this, you may hear something like, your account's been compromised, so we need you to move your money somewhere else. And, in these cases, it may feel like someone is trying to help you, but, you may, and again, they may be impersonating your financial institution as well when they're doing this. So what's really happening in these types of situations?
So this is often the second half of an impersonation scam, right? So why are they calling to impersonate the institution? Because they're trying to get you to move your money to a safe account, right? They're trying to protect your account. So the move your money to a safe scam is pretty simple, right? They are convincing you that your account is compromised. Once they've accomplished that, they're able to socially engineer you to think that, hey, right, my account is hacked, I need to save it. So the scammer then instructs you to move the funds, and it's typically done by either wire. Wires are very typical because they're quick, they're fast, and once that money's gone, right, it's very hard to get back. Another way that, especially nowadays, is using crypto. There's many crypto, obviously, wallets and crypto transactions that you can process. Most people, they hear the big ones, Bitcoin, Ethereum, but actually, fraudsters prefer some of the smaller ones. So if you're being asked to move money out of your account into a crypto account, but then all of a sudden you don't even recognize the crypto account they're sending it to you to, that's a red flag, right? Whether it could be It can even be cash. One of the ones that we've seen lately here is where, right, we're protecting your account. We need you to go and put go withdraw 10, 15, 20,000, whatever amount it is that you're being targeted, and put it in your mailbox, right? Someone's going to
Mm,
come and pick it up, or meet me at a parking lot, and we're going to, get in, we're going to protect it. We see it in all types, and that type of scam it actually impacts a lot of other types, but
mhm.
it's just they're targeting and they're playing on the person's emotional state of my account is compromised. What can I do? Right? So for people that work in the finance world, I mean, it's probably easier to understand. But if your experience is in maybe something else, right? I'm not aware of everything that goes on in another industry. So
Yeah.
sometimes people, right, they think that, oh, this is probably normal. So
Yeah.
making sure that, we're sharing that information out there, that if someone's calling you and saying, hey, send your money through a crypto, protect your account, we will never do that, right? Shell
Mhm.
Federal Credit Union will never ask a member to withdraw money, put it in a mailbox,
Yeah.
or withdraw money and send it to a crypto account to keep it safe,
Mhm.
right? That is not how we operate. And most financial institutions that, you know, have members and customers, they don't operate that way.
Yeah, yeah. So, what are some warning signs? If someone's trying to do this to me, what are some warning bells that should be going off in my head when the person is talking to me? And what should I do then to prevent it?
Good question. So I think one of the biggest, and you got to understand that when it comes to fraudsters, right, you have different levels of fraud
Mm.
people, right? You have the professionals, and then you have those that just started. So there's call centers, unfortunately, dedicated in other parts of the world, and even here in the United States, where there's call centers set up just like us, right? Where we have our day-to-day operations to provide the best member service. There are call centers dedicated to just targeting people.
Oh, wow.
So these individuals are trained in their craft, where they'll go and, if you're dealing with a sophisticated scammer, they're trained to talk like the institutions they're targeting.
Mm,
They go to our websites and they learn about our products and services. They learn about what we're offering. They learn how we operate. They learn the little words that, we put in these websites, and then they use that lingo. They use that verbiage when they talk to our members, right?
mm.
Well, the ones that perhaps just started, it's a little bit different, but nonetheless, right, understanding and listening to what they're saying, right? They can talk pretty, right? They can say, we're calling to protect your account in a calm, soft tone. They can call you and pretend that they're on your side and we need to keep it safe. But if in that same conversation they are then saying, we need you to go and buy a gift card, that's where the
Mm.
red flag is, right?
Okay,
Because
yeah.
we don't do that,
Right.
right? If they're saying, hey, we're keeping your account safe, we're here to work for you, we're here to provide you the best member service, but we need you to go and send this money and put it in an ATM machine or a ATM Bitcoin machine.
Mm.
Yeah, we don't do that. So I think looking at it from the bigger picture, and I think one of the things that one of the safeguards that we have as just humans, right, is getting that second opinion on things that we do on a day-to-day basis. One of the
Mm.
things that we say often is, right, hey, I don't understand this, can you help me? Having a family member, having someone that maybe has a bank account at Shell, and say, hey, did you get this text message? This is what I just got, right?
Yeah.
That's a way to kind of collaborate and just kind of stay informed.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are some of the red flags that typically we like to share and just kind of say, hey, does it make sense?
Right.
Right? Does it make sense? You're
Yeah.
protecting my account, but it's going to a crypto machine. Yeah, no, Shell doesn't do
Yeah,
that.
or like a mailbox is not exactly
Yeah,
secure. So,
no,
yeah, that
no,
doesn't seem to kind of line up in the logic. Yeah, that
correct.
makes sense. Okay, so another increasingly common approach with scammers involves something that a lot of people nowadays are actively looking for, which is a job. So let's talk about job or work from home scams. Remote and work from home opportunities are everywhere now, which unfortunately gives scammers kind of another avenue to target people. So, what does a typical job or work from home scam look like?
So, these can actually come in many, many forms. Unfortunately, job scams within 2020 and 2024, the losses have tripled of what's being reported.
Mm,
The median loss is about $2,000. But what you want to pay attention with this, because it's a fraud scam that has increased, is about 60% of off work from home, or not work from home, but just job scams in general, actually generate from social media, right?
Mm.
Whether it's your big social media sites. And typically what they're targeting is urgency. We understand the market we live in now, right? We understand the economy that we live in now. For some people it's okay, for others, they're struggling. And for others it's great. So because of that, these job scams, they're different in their forms and they target individuals differently. But one thing to focus on is, does it make sense, right? So
Mhm.
a lot of people, what they get is they'll get a text message, maybe a DM through Instagram or something, and they're like, "Hey, right, I got a job offer for you. Do you want to come, work for my company?" Yeah, absolutely, right. Awesome. Well, we're gonna set you up with a work from home kit. We're gonna pay you this X amount every week. You're gonna make a lot of money, and right, you
Yeah.
you hit the lotto. You're
You're like,
working from
wow,
home.
$3,000 a week.
I get to work from my
Great.
couch. I get to, I'm making 3,000 a week. Absolutely. Let's do it. They even promise you a bonus just to start off.
Mhm.
But then they say, well, we're going to send you a check, right? We're going to send you a check for $10,000. And what we need you to do is to go to one of these digital, Best Buy, or one of these big companies, and buy the setup. We need you to buy a computer. We need you to buy this. We need you to buy that. Oh, and by the way, 30% of that's your first paycheck because we like you that much. So they get
Mhm.
they got their paycheck ahead of time. And then the rest, well, but the rest, well, we're gonna need whatever you don't spend, right? We're gonna need you to send it in the form of a gift card, right? But you
Oh.
only have about $1,000 to buy the equipment, and only 30%. So really, you got to send us back X dollar amount,
Mhm.
right? That's one way, the overpayment when it comes to the work scams. Other times it could be that you're going in, they have you go and, right? I'm gonna walk. You got to go into a Walmart, and your job is to walk around and see how clean the store is, see if, right, how they check you out. But we need you to buy a $500 gift card. So
Mhm.
once you get that gift card, you're gonna fill out a survey. You're gonna tell us how they did, and you're gonna make $2,000. But of course, before we pay you, you're gonna scratch the back of that gift card
And send
because
us
we
the,
need that money first
yeah.
to verify that you actually processed the transaction.
Mm.
So the individual is, the individual that's being targeted says, "Oh, absolutely, I'm about to make 2,000." They do it. They never hear from them again, right?
Oh,
And they've now
yeah.
used their own money to purchase this gift card. So the biggest thing here is unsolicited reach.
Mhm.
And if you're using your own money, legitimate
Yeah.
companies aren't gonna make you to use your own accounts to fund and transfer funds, or process transactions on behalf of a company.
Yeah, so basically, a legitimate job, like you said, they're not going to make you pay to get the job in some
No.
way.
No,
Okay.
right? I mean, there might, and don't get me wrong, there are companies that if you want to go work for them, right? You got to pay for your own travel cost.
Yes,
You got
yeah.
to, and that's different, right? If you're
Mhm.
having to get to the place where you're going to work at,
Yeah.
that's one thing. But if you're going to work from home and they want you to buy your own equipment, and then they
Mm.
want you to send them part of that money back, right?
That's a little
That
more
that doesn't make
fishy.
a lot of sense. So
Okay.
that's where you need to take a step back and slow down and, okay, let me research that company. Let me look
Yeah.
into the who is this? Who are they, right? Who am I talking to? I'm talking to a John Doe that claims to be the representative in HR for this company that I just got this job. Well, is it even a legit company? Is it
Mhm.
real? Oh, it is real. Well, let me pick up the phone and call the number that I found on the website and ask for the John Doe, see if I'm actually interacting with this individual that I'm talking to.
Yeah.
Now, you have the next layer of expert fraudsters that create fake websites and fake companies.
Mm.
So checking if it's a local in Texas, checking the controller's website, right? Is it registered to a perhaps an LLC, or actual legit business, right? Or if it's out of state, looking at those controller websites
Mhm.
and verifying that the company's real. That's important.
Yeah, I've actually seen an example of this before where someone I know applied to a job through LinkedIn, and then somehow the fraudster was able to respond as if they were from that company and say, "Hey, we'd like to interview you,
Mm-hmm.
congratulations." And, the way that we figured out that it was fake was by getting the name of the person that he was talking to, and then going back into LinkedIn and seeing if we could find that person. And that obviously that person had no connection to the company on
Right.
LinkedIn, nothing on the website, and then actually reaching back out to the company and saying, "Hey, like, does this person, I got this job offer from y'all. Does this person work here?" And they were like, "No." So that was, one way, just maybe going in and doing that extra bit of research kind of to
Yes.
see if it seems legitimate.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, that's really good information. And I feel like that's another one. I feel like I'm noticing a pattern here where the scammers they're preying on insecurities or, senses of urgencies or your emotions, right?
Yes.
You need a job, you need money, you've lost your money. I hate that they are able to kind of prey on people's like weakest moments like that.
Oh, absolutely. And good thing you mentioned LinkedIn, right? So LinkedIn is actually one of those that unfortunately it's very good for when you're trying to network with people and there's great resources there that you can gather, but it's also a hub for a lot of these fraudsters and
Hmm.
scammers to right? Get information and
Yeah.
the amount of emails sometimes that I get, private messages that I get promising like, "Hey, you want a job here? Hey, I saw your LinkedIn resume and it's amazing. Like, how would you like to?" Right?
Yeah.
It sounds pretty. It sounds great, but how true is it? And
Right.
I think they, like you mentioned, they prey on people's vulnerabilities, or they they
Yes.
they
Yeah. That's a good
target
word.
they target right what you're going through,
Hmm.
and we're humans, right? We have a nature sometimes, and especially on social media, to overshare, right?
Yeah.
Whether we like that, whether it's a good thing or not, that's a personal perspective.
Hmm.
But it's available for us, so a lot of people do that. But there's fraudsters and scammers that they look at that information, and they see, okay, this person has here, they lived in Houston, but they worked at this company, they do this, they do this. So then
Hmm.
they tailor the scams to target you, right? What you're
Yeah.
going through, right?
Hmm.
So being careful what we're sharing, that we're not oversharing perhaps information. But even if we do that, if you get a random text message or a phone call, right? You can identify within your own, self and say, okay, wait, why are they offering me a job? I got
Yeah.
an email the other day. I was sitting and I got something about my fraud. And I'm like, well, how would they know I do fraud? LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
So people are watching that kind of stuff, and
Hmm.
with AI, they don't even have to sit there and watch it manually, right? They can create
They just
skills
run
and,
it
and,
in the
and
background.
technology that kind of just monitors that and generates a summary to them. And they then can grab that summary and all your information, name, phone number, email address, and target you, right?
Mm.
It's never been easier to target individuals, to scam them. And I think that is where, you have to kind of slow down.
Yeah.
Slow down and verify directly with the institution,
Yeah.
if or anyone that whatever you're being targeted in.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to our next one. So then there's another type of scam that can kind of maybe look like a job opportunity, but it also kind of feels like a game a little bit. So let's talk about task scams and easy money offers. So you might see offers to make money by doing things that are really simple, like liking videos or rating products or completing online tasks or playing a game or something like that. So how do these task scams work?
Absolutely. So typically they'll reach out to you. It could be social media, it could be right through many ways. But what they try to do is they try to get you to, right, download an application, whether it's an app, whether it's a private message. I've seen it a lot through WhatsApp.
Mm.
That could be a way that they kind of target you. It's a selective set of just group of people, perhaps like, hey, right, join our group, and we give daily tasks. Download this application, and you can make a lot of money. And when they download these applications, they see their account growing because they're completing simple tasks.
Yeah.
But when they try to go withdraw the cash, it's like, okay, you have $500 balance sitting there, but in order to access that $500, you need to deposit 50, right? So guess what? Next thing you know, you've already spent all this time. You're like, okay, it
Mm.
works. You're seeing all the group people talk about it. You deposit 50, and that's how they get you, right? So
Mm.
sometimes these groups are comprised of just themselves, the fraudsters,
Mm.
and they only let individuals in that they're targeting.
Oh, so they
So
pretend to
they
be other
pretend,
people
oh,
that
I
are
just
doing
cashed
it.
out, X
Mm.
dollars. So we've seen that before, but right. The biggest thing here is if it sounds too good to be true, if you can make, $500 in a few hours, you know, clearing things on an application, then, right,
Yeah, it's
everyone
kind of
would be doing
a
it.
little too good to be
Yeah,
true.
too good to be
Yeah.
true. So just, going back, looking at the source, if they're asking you to immediately get out of where you're, if they reach out via social media, you don't know them, and they want you to go and download an app that you don't know, right? Maybe pause
Hmm.
for a minute and do
Okay.
some research into what they're asking you to do.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I think another takeaway from that I'm getting is, if you have to pay money in order to get paid, that's probably a red flag.
Huge.
I think in some scams, they can happen very quickly. You get a phone call, you get a text or an offer, and they give you that immediate pressure to act like we've kind of been talking about. But the next type can be very different because in this situation, the scammer may be willing to spend weeks or even months trying to build your trust. And that will lead us into romance or friendship investment scams. And I feel like when people hear romance scams, they might immediately think of someone online that they met asking for money, but a lot of times they can be a lot more gradual than that, right? So how
Yeah.
does someone even get to that point where they build enough trust with a victim that they're able to scam them out of a lot of money?
So these types of scams, romance scams, they can take time, right? They can either be within a few days, a few weeks, but what we normally see is, and when we talk to, unfortunately, to people that become victims, members that become victims to this type of scams, is that they've actually been talking to these individuals for months, sometimes even years, right? Just
Mm.
depending on how big the scam is. And right, what happens with these are that, like you said, it could be social media. Maybe it starts in a connection, a friend that you made, and all of a sudden, right, they sent you a friend request. You start talking little by little. A friendship turns into an emotional relationship. That emotional relationship, right, there's a big push immediately to maybe get out of there and go to a specific app or a
Mm.
specific messaging platform that they want. We also see it in your common dating applications. There's nothing wrong with having date for a lot of people. There's a lot of success in dating applications. They meet people virtually, and then eventually
Mm.
they meet them in person. And there's even successful long-term relationship or long-distance relationships where they probably never meet until later on.
Hmm.
So we're not saying that having a relationship outside is bad, but what we see when it comes to fraud is that these relationships, there's a quickness to, hey, we met, we liked each other, but let's get out of the app. Let's go talk here.
Mm.
And then they start with, hey, I'm traveling. I'm short $20. Can you
Mm.
send me? My card's not working. You send them $100 here to help them out. They pay you back, right? Then they do it again.
Developing that
They
trust a little
develop that
bit.
trust, right?
Yeah.
Do it again. They pay you back. So 6, 7, 8 months down the line, when they're telling you that they're in, maybe another part of the world, and unfortunately their travel plans there's an issue, and only you can help them. They don't have anyone else. They need you to send them 20, $30,000 in order to get back.
Mm.
They're gonna pay you back. Well, you've been paying them back for the last 6 months. They're talking to you every day. They're meeting with you, right, via messaging.
Mm.
You don't hesitate, right,
Yeah.
because you have that emotional connection. Now, one red flag that I do want to highlight is if they never want to meet with you in video, a video call, right? There's that big urgency of no, I'm unavailable. That's something that we tend to highlight.
Okay.
Now, with the technology advancement, there's you can bypass that, but that is something to mention, right?
Okay.
Something to keep an eye out.
Okay. So I imagine that with these types of scams, because they are so gradual and our emotions get so tied into it, that those warning signs might be harder and harder to recognize. So are there any other warning signs? And if you start to suspect that something may be a little bit suspicious, what is a recommendation for what to do in that situation?
So there's definitely I think the big red flag is if they want to keep it private, right?
Mm.
If there's nothing wrong with privacy in your relationships, or in the conversations that you have on a day to day. I think everybody wants that.
Mm.
But if they force you to say, hey, don't talk about this relation, this don't please don't tell anyone about the money that I'm asking you about, or hey, let's just not tell anyone and just keep it private. I
Mm.
think that is where, right, a red flag that people need to be aware of, especially if you're talking to someone long term for 5, 6 months. They've been asking you for money, they're asking you for money, they want to involve some kind of financial transaction. That's where, right, you have the privacy flag, you have the money involvement, you have how did I meet him? I've never met him in person,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So I think those are things to really consider. Not to say that there aren't some fraudsters out there that will, that they'll be themselves on these applications. So when you video call them, like you're actually looking at the person.
Yeah.
I've had many samples of that where we talk to members and they're like, "No, I video call them every day," right?
Mm.
But have you ever seen them in person? Right?
Yeah.
It's these fraudsters. If they're operating out of another country, they don't care if you see their face because their risk is very low. Like no
Yeah.
one's going to go and arrest them, right?
So making sure that you look at it from an outside perspective,
Okay.
right? Does it make sense? I think that's usually what we go back to, and
Mhm.
especially if you're talking to, there's a lot of celebrity romance scams where, Luke Bryan or someone out there like, oh, I've been talking to this person for a long
Oh
time.
yeah, I've gotten DMs before from
Yeah,
like Johnny Depp, like, and you're like,
yeah.
oh great,
Like really, well,
he messaged me, like,
just look at the timestamp when you were
yeah,
messaging him, and most of these individuals' lives are public, right? So you
yeah,
see where they're at all the time.
yeah,
If he's out, filming a movie, then the likelihood that he's
yeah,
texting you is probably low.
yeah,
And right, just bring a little bit of common
yeah,
sense into the mix.
for
Yeah.
sure. I also think, do you think it seems to me like it might, even if someone's saying to keep it private, if you're a little bit suspicious, maybe bringing in, a trusted friend or family
Yes.
member or something to kind of say, hey, does this seem good to you? Does this seem normal? Do you think that's a valuable thing to do as well?
I think that's a very valuable thing. It goes back to what we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah.
Getting that second opinion,
Mm-hmm.
and it never hurts to have a second opinion in everything we do in life, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, with relationships, it's a little harder because,
Yeah,
right, getting a second opinion, like it involves, hey, take a look at this message, which could be a little bit private
for
between
sure.
you,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe not going into depth into all of the conversation. But
Yeah.
hey, I need your opinion. I've been talking to somebody. I don't want to get too much into it for a while now, but they're asking me for money because they're trying to rent a helicopter to go from here to here so they can then get a plane and get on a boat.
Mm.
I've heard all of that, right? A second opinion in that perspective of, yeah, that makes sense, or I've heard of that, goes a long way, because the likelihood that people have heard of that or seen that is
Yeah.
very low, right? And there's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of resources out there that people can look at, and even documentaries on
Yeah,
some
I've
of
I've
our.
watched a
You've
few.
seen a few,
Yeah, I've seen a few of the
yeah,
documentaries like that.
and
Yeah.
you can see the stories, right? Those
Yeah.
stories that are in those films, they're happening every day,
Yeah.
to members in financial institutions. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Okay. So our next scam uses, different emotion besides friendship and romance. Instead of building trust over time, this one is going to try to scare you into acting immediately. And that will bring us to tech support or computer pop-up scams. A lot of people have probably seen some version of this online. A pop-up is suddenly going to come while you're browsing the internet and tell you that your computer has a virus or has been compromised and you need to, call this number right away for help. So what can happen in this situation? If what does that look like, and what will happen if you kind of follow through with that action?
No, for sure. So the pop-up scams, you typically see them whenever let's say you're working on something on your PC. All of a sudden, you get a pop-up that says, "Hey, there's a security warning on your PC. You need to call this number and you need to verify, right, your account." Typically, what happens when you call that number, someone in a call center somewhere else in the world is going to answer and say, your account's been compromised, and in order to secure your account, we're going to have to remote into your PC to fix it
Mm.
and clean it. It's going to cost you a little bit, but we need a remote. And the moment they remote, they now have access to your accounts, right? Your PC and whatever's in there. So typically, what happens is, what we see is that, right, they pretend to fix it, and then they say, okay, now it's time to pay us, right? So they tell you, they log off of the PC. You need to make a transfer. You need to make a transfer from your account over to our account. So you log into your
Oh,
bank
and they
account.
could see all
And
of
while you're
it.
in your bank account, they're still in there, right? So they can go in there and manufacture their way into changing what you're seeing in the screen. And
Mm.
typically, you think, you pay them $200, you sent them, and they're showing you that you sent 2,000. So right, they're
Oh.
sitting there making you feel bad, like, oh my god, you there's extra money there and you need to send it back. And the types of scams, they fluctuate,
Okay.
right? So the way that they target these, but the biggest thing to remember is, if you're getting a pop-up and the security software is saying, hey, call this number, most security software isn't gonna have a number for you to call.
Hmm.
So or in the pop-up, right, you're going to want to call the security systems, you're going to want to verify that. But more importantly, right, there's external sources where you can take these PCs to get cleaned,
Mm.
and using that. Best Buy, Geek Squad's one that we recommend, right? Take your PC and get it checked out in person, right? Drop it off with them so they can see it. But nonetheless, these tech scams are, unfortunately, they hit members every day. I think it's one
Mm.
of the ones that we see very often
Mm.
because, right, who's not in their PC these days,
Yeah,
who's
everyone's
not using
online all the
technology these
time.
days. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if you see like a pop-up that looks a little bit fishy, the best thing that you should do is just kind of pause and then maybe take your computer in to get looked at, or what other steps should you take if that
Yeah, you want to
happens?
pause. You want to first of all, you want to turn off the PC immediately, right? You want to
Okay.
disconnect it, turn it off. If you suspect that you've been victimized or that someone's trying to remote into your PC, so you want to disconnect that connection so that they can't access it. Now, more than likely, if you have accounts that you're using every day, they're probably compromised. So you want to
Mm,
call your bank, your financial institution, Shell. You want to call us and let us know,
okay.
right? Because what we're going to do is we're going to obviously, right, block your account in a protective measure until you have the ability to step inside of a branch and make that account number change, right?
Okay.
So hopefully we can protect it. Now, time is of the essence with these because
Oh,
if they've already accessed your account, they have account numbers. So right, we want to make sure that we change that information as soon as possible so that they can't go out and create checks and or whatever else it is that they do.
awesome. Okay. And that will bring us to our last type of scam that we're going to talk about today, which is marketplace scams. Online marketplaces make it really easy to buy and sell things locally, but unfortunately, scammers know that too, and they can use that to prey on people. So, what are some of the marketplace scams that people should be looking out for?
Absolutely. So marketplace scams are there's many, right? But some of the ones that you need to focus on that I recommend that you kind of look into are right if you're there if the what you're purchasing is completely right undervalued, right? If you're buying a car that's worth 20,000 and they're selling it to you for 5,000,
Mm,
then that's a red flag, right? Pay attention
okay.
to that. But also if they don't want to meet you in person, right? If they're demanding that, right, you send them part of the money up front because then it's going to get delivered and the car's going to get shipped, right? That is something to pay attention to.
Okay.
Unfortunately, there's scammers out there that in these marketplaces they target people that are actually looking for example a car or an object that you can probably find for a lower price, but they also use these marketplaces to mimic and impersonate businesses. So they'll pretend to be this dealership that is legit. They'll convince the member, and then the member goes out and it's purchases this car thinking that they're going to receive it, and it never comes in the mail, right?
Mm,
So unfortunately, that's just kind of how these fraudsters use these marketplaces. So always making sure that if you're meeting in person, you're meeting in a safe place, in a public place, and that if you're conducting business through our digital channels such as Sell, that you know who you're sending the money to. With marketplace scams, right? That's a little hard. So
yeah.
just making sure that you're doing it in person, that you see the item, that you meet them in a public place, and that if you are sending the money and without seeing the item and they're shipping it, that it's done in one of these marketplaces that's secure. So
Okay.
secure, right? So you want to make sure that the platform that you're doing is secure and that there's ways to maybe such as, for example, I'll use Amazon as an example, right? If you're buying an item from a vendor through Amazon, your payment information isn't going to the vendor; it's going through that intermediary, which is Amazon.
Yes. Yeah.
So making sure that if you're using these payment platforms, that they have some kind of validity to them.
Yeah, and I think like certain payment platforms have their own,
Hmm.
fraud sectors that you can do reports and stuff like
Correct.
PayPal or like something like that.
Correct. And always, if you're not sure, call the platforms that you're doing business with, right? So
Mm-hmm.
ask, hey, is this does this make sense?
Okay.
For us, we can only speak for on behalf of Shell Federal Credit
Right,
Union.
of
You
course.
can
Yeah.
always call us, but if you're purchasing through a marketplace, then especially if you're buying from an individual, right?
Mm,
I recommend doing it in person,
yeah.
because if the deal is online but it sounds too good to be true, then it's probably there's some red flags there that you want to pay attention to.
Okay, awesome. So we've covered a lot of different scams today, and on the surface, they can all look very different, but it kind of brings us back to a common theme that I see running through them, which is, that these scammers all have specific ways that they try to get us to help them, and by doing that, they are then taking advantage of that to get money from us. So when you look at all of the different scams together, what are some important things that you want people to remember, like kind of to wrap it all up a little bit and talk about some of the key things that you should be thinking about as a whole?
No, absolutely. Great question. I think when it comes down to like looking at all of these types of scams and everything that that we've kind of talked about and shared. Obviously, there's a lot more that we could sit here all day and talk about it, but
Yeah.
the main thing to remember is to slow down, right? You
Mm.
want to slow down. You want to look at the source of information that's in front of you, whether it's a right, we're dealing with a romance scam or an impersonator, or whether we're dealing with a, whatever type of scam. Slow down, right? What are they asking of me, and how can I make sure that whatever I'm dealing with is not a scam,
Mhm.
right? In most cases, by calling the source, in this case Shell, and asking us, right, you're going to get your answer.
Yeah.
But also using us as a resource, right? We invest heavily in member protection and fraud protection, and right, use us as a resource, right?
Mhm.
Protecting your account is one of the ways that we provide 5.5 service to our members.
Yeah.
So making sure that you call us, and if there's something that we can do to verify something, whether it's an email that you got, perhaps an email address, or perhaps it's a check that you got from an unsolicited person that wants you to deposit it, right? Call us, ask us to look into that before you make the transaction, before you send out the money. I think that's kind of the key. Slowing
Awesome.
down.
Awesome. So, at Shell FCU, like you said, we try to be an excellent resource for our members when it comes to
Absolutely.
this. But are there any other outside resources that you might recommend?
Yes, there's many resources actually, and obviously there's so many that I could sit here and list. But one of the ones that I kind of want to talk about is, making sure that you report your fraud first of all to the Federal Trade Commission, right? You can go to reportfraud.ftc.gov to report the transaction, right? The more people that report, the more awareness there is, and the more likelihood that government agencies can intervene and act. Also, depending on the type of fraud, if you're dealing with mail fraud, for example, perhaps your mail got stolen, reporting it to the Office of Inspector General. You can do that. Go into their website. Um, there's all types of resources. I mean, one of the bigger ones I think that for the membership that you really should consider is reporting it to all three credit bureaus, right? You want to go to the credit bureaus, each one individually, and put a fraud alert on your credit, right?
Mm.
Set a phone number where if there's a hit that takes place, that they call you and verify that information. Because ultimately, right, we know our data's out there, and we know that the likelihood that someone can find our phone number or social is there's a high possibility. But if you add those security layers and protections, if someone does go in and tries to steal your identity, or right, use your account to apply for loans or anything like that, that there is that fraud alert, and that the institutions, when they see this, right, they act appropriately in not
Mhm.
opening those accounts.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And I'm looking at our producer back here, but we'll make sure we have some of those links. You provided some links and stuff, and we'll make sure we have those in our description of the video for anybody
Absolutely.
who needs them.
And they can always call us, right? If they
Yes.
want a list of links specific, I mean, there's a lot. They can always give us a call, and the fraud department will share that as well.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, so let's go ahead and open it up for some questions now. We have some really good questions in the chat here, but I do have one question that I just wanted to ask you, which is, in your experience working here at Shell FCU, what scams do you tend to see? I'm kind of just thinking of this right now, but what scams do you tend to see popping up more often, or at least like recently? What type of scam are you seeing more than others, if there are any?
So as of probably the last, I'd say, last
Mhm.
few months, I mean, there's all types we see, right? When you're dealing with a fraud department for a over $2 billion institution, you see a lot. But I think right now the biggest, and I think not just for us, but across the nation, is going to be the AI powered scams,
Mhm.
where right before it used to be a business email compromise. Well, now it's the business email compromise without the email being compromised. And what does that
Oh.
mean, right? It means that these fraudsters are targeting your LinkedIn's, they're targeting bank employees, they're targeting executives, and they are using them, right? They're targeting whether it's LinkedIn and seeing who they are, cloning their voices, and then
Mm.
calling individuals within the institution or within the business, and someone that's familiar, to make them feel like, hey, oh, I know who I'm talking about, right?
Mm.
So they don't have to get access into your email anymore to get that information. With simply just knowing who you're talking to on a LinkedIn, they call them, the person picks up, says hello, right? A few seconds, they're able to kind of mimic that voice, and then target, right, the
Mm.
businesses that you're doing business with. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, a lot of people that they're giving out their information to that. And I
Yeah.
think that's kind of the path where we're going to start seeing a little bit more.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a lot more. I mean, romance scams are big. We just talked about those, where unfortunately people get hit on social media and
Mm.
they start. So it's just another one that I've seen quite a bit actually is people being asked to put their debit card and their cash in mailboxes.
Hmm.
That's surprisingly, that's one that, you know, you would think, or right, why would we do that? But
Yeah.
again, they're
But they're,
targeting
I
that
feel like they're
emotional
able to,
state.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
able to be convincing. They're able
Mm-hmm.
to convince.
Yeah.
So speaking of AI, that we have a question, and this is also something we were kind of talking a little bit before we started the webinar today, but how has AI changed the way fraudsters operate, especially with phishing, voice cloning, or fake identities?
We just mentioned that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think AI it's gonna be it's good, right? In the sense of you can use it for to be productive, but fraudsters are using this to perfect their profession. So
Yeah.
whereas before you would see, you know, an email come in and that email had obvious signs of, well, this doesn't make sense. The
Mhm.
structure of the writing doesn't add up. With AI, right? They're using AI to create and mimic the structure that they
Yeah.
want that's professional. So every time that an institution releases a communication, they grab that communication, they put it into the AI system and say, this is how this institution communicates with their members, with their customers. This is how this business talks to their customers on public media releases, press releases. I need you to mimic the same thing, but do it to target, right? And believe it, please understand, these fraudsters aren't using your typical AI chat systems that you hear on a day-to-day basis. There are dedicated fraud AI systems that fraudsters and scammers have developed to generate these types of scams, right? So
Mhm.
obviously, I won't mention what their names are for security and
Mm.
to not share that awareness, but there are dedicated, just like you have your day-to-day, you know, your chat GPTs and things like that that everyday people use. These fraud AI systems are solely dedicated and integrated within the network to learn from themselves to then generate how Shell talks to the customers. How so sometimes when you get a text message, it sounds so convincing. It's
Mhm.
because they're using these systems, right?
Yeah.
That target that. So unfortunately, if a fraudster or scammer goes and opens a membership somewhere, then they get all the communications that a typical member would, right?
Yeah.
So they then use that information. So that is how in the fraud world we're seeing that. I just came back from a conference regarding that actually, and
Mm.
they were talking about that. So where it's headed. I think that's where, you know, we all in the industry, and especially our members, want to be aware that, right, what used to be impossible, such as, you know, hey, call us, we're going to verify you via a video call.
Mhm.
Fraudsters are using AI to then, right, they get a couple pictures, and when they're calling into the call centers, the reps think they're talking to the member, but it's really
Wow.
just an AI generated video
Yeah.
of that person that they're
Mm.
trying to impersonate.
Ugh. I feel like that also kind of answers another question that we got, which is what do you see as the biggest emerging financial fraud threat over the next few years?
Yeah,
So,
definitely the AI impersonation, especially the all the phishing and how they're going to use that to truly just enhance and perfect how they attack not just us, but I mean, you have to understand the market that we're in. We're in right relatively close to Houston, so from here for our members that are local, right, we're number 2 in the nation for business email compromise. But
mm,
if fraudsters are now using AI, like think about how that's going to impact not just us, but nationally.
yeah.
So I think it's one of those things where we want to be ahead of it. And you know, I'm proud to work at an institution that invests so heavily in fraud protection.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the right call.
Mhm.
But for those members that are out there that, you know, they work somewhere else, that they do business, that they have their businesses, that they, you know, that they conduct day-to-day business, right? Making sure that you stay aware with those trends. There's multiple right, resources, and understanding how these fraud scams work will help you because, right, if you're a business owner and you're out there trying to generate income for your family and you're trying to collect vendors and sell your material, it's easy to sometimes bypass some of these red flags that are out there. So
Yeah.
understanding how the scams work, I think, is important.
Awesome. Um, we have a question. How do you distinguish between an isolated fraudulent transaction and evidence of a larger coordinated fraud scheme?
Good question. So I think a lot of that involves, right, making sure that we have proper tracking in place and how we monitor these transactions, right?
Mm,
So when you're dealing with a lot of members and a lot of funds, obviously isolated transactions can sometimes be connected. The
mm,
inner workings on how we do that, I won't get into the nitty gritty on how and what we do to make sure that happens, but distinguishing that comes in the sense of right communication, right, we
okay.
communicate not just internally within our teams, within other departments, but also externally with other financial institutions, right?
Mm,
We have a good collaboration where we are able to, right, try to stay ahead and what are y'all seeing that maybe we're not seeing? Hey,
mm,
we just got a member that got defrauded this way. Oh, we just had the same, right? There's some kind of coordination happening,
okay.
and typically a lot of these scams start local, right? So it can be a local individual, but it can also be an external. So the targets come from all over the place.
Yeah, yeah. How does secrecy increase a scammer's psychological control before they introduce an investment or money request?
So the psychological control is actually very important, right? That's a big piece,
Mm,
especially and you have the investment piece that connects to the romance actually. So the way it works, and it can just be, it doesn't have to be romance related, but it can be. But the psychological effect of it comes in the sense of, right, hey, Audrey, I'd love to invite you to generate, 2x what you're making now, and I got a great business opportunity. And if you trust me, we're gonna make this work.
I'm like, great.
Keep in mind
Just
that from a
kidding.
psychological perspective, I've been talking to you now for 6 months. You know who my friends are. You know where I
Yeah.
work. You know what I've done. So there's that training of, right, here's who I am. Feel
Yes.
comfortable. Hey, by the way, Audrey, now that we're such great friends, we have such a great connection. I'd love to introduce you to something that I think is going to change your life, right? It's
Mm,
a small investment on your behalf. It's only 5,000, but the net that we're going to make on this is going to be massive, right? We're going to
mm,
make $200,000-300,000 here, but you know, it's okay if you don't want to, right? Think about it, come back to me. But honestly, I don't want you to miss out. And
yeah.
honestly, if you don't act by the end of the week, I'm gonna have to give that opportunity to someone else. But you
Mm,
trust me, right? By the way, been thinking about you and have a great day.
yeah.
Those little psychological effects really get into the minds of people, and they're like, I'm not gonna miss out on this, right? The
Yeah.
urgency, it's coming to an end. Friday, here's $5,000,
Right.
right? So that is how, from a psychological perspective, people get targeted.
Hmm.
They build that relationship, whether it's a romance or whether it's just, right, from a business perspective.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind that the higher level fraudsters, the scammers that are professionals, they will actually, for the first few investments, they'll actually give you some of the money, right? Some of the money
Mm,
that they've moved, that they've earned from some other scam, they'll put it in your bank account. And when because I've had those conversations with members, but I've already made some money, right? Oh yeah, I'm sure you have. You made 10, 15, 20,000, and now they're asking you for 300,000. Well, that's what they're going towards, that bigger number. Or they're using you as a mule, where they're having your account being moved. They're moving for scam the money into your account so that you can then send it somewhere else. So
mm.
there's always some type of connectivity there when you're dealing with a fraudster, that there's a bigger reason there behind that sometimes people don't see.
Oh, awesome. Um, if someone gives a fake tech support agent remote access, what should they assume has been compromised? That's a good question.
You should assume everything is compromised, right?
Okay.
If it's on your PC, everything in your PC, you should assume it's compromised. And you
Mm,
should proceed as if that is the case. So that is why I recommend that you shut down your computer, close it, disconnect it from the power, and as soon as you can, take it to somewhere where it can get professionally cleaned. One of the things that we like to say is time, like I said, time is of the essence. So if that computer is already compromised, the sooner you do that, the less likelihood that your information is going to be out there. But
okay.
don't forget, there's two parts to that. One thing is securing your computer. The other thing is securing your bank accounts. So making
Mm,
sure that you immediately call your bank, your Shell Federal Credit Union, of course, call us. But any other financial institution that you have, any else that you do business with, that you call them and make them aware, because they're going to be able to either check to see if your accounts are compromised, or out of the precaution, they're going to go ahead and make those adjustments so that you don't potentially lose funds out there in a month or so.
okay. Awesome. Um, if a scammer uses a legitimate looking Facebook account with years of activity, what additional steps should a buyer take to verify them? For I guess for a marketplace scam.
Good question. And sometimes these legitimate Facebook accounts are actually hacked into. So the person that you're
Mm,
talking to is actually someone real. It's just that their account was compromised and the
yeah.
fraudster's using it. So the biggest thing that you can do is don't do the transaction online if the deal is too good to be true, right? Meet in person. Most of the
Hmm.
Facebook transactions you're going to do, meet in a public place, go to a police station in the parking lot. That's
Mm,
a good idea. But right, make sure that if they're asking you to send the money first, right? There
probably.
and I've seen that. I mean, there's been things that I buy on there. I have a problem where I like to buy things, right? So it's one of those things where I've used Marketplace before quite a bit, and I've had where people are like, "Hey, you come buy this Christmas tree." Well, yeah, but I have so many people wanting the Christmas tree. You got to send me half of it first.
Mm,
Uh, I don't want the Christmas tree that much, right?
yeah.
I'll meet you, and if it's available, I'll get the deal.
Right.
At the end of the day, I think your accounts and the money that you work so hard for is a little bit more important
For sure.
than the item that you're purchasing.
Yeah, absolutely. Does reporting individual scammers actually prevent fraud, or does it mostly document crimes after the damage is already done?
So it actually does two things, at least for us and for what I've seen in my experience. So reporting scammers is good because you allow that individual to be documented in the network, right? So when you document these individuals, there are teams within the FBI and other federal agencies that actually look at the information that we're providing, that you're providing, and when they analyze, and the good side of AI is that now they're starting to use those systems to kind of put everything together. And hey,
Hmm.
we have a John X here, John X here, John X here. This it seems that this John X is targeting maybe this subset of population. We need to look into that person, right? So it actually works. Now, obviously, when you're dealing with fraud, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, so there's a lot of fraudsters out there that take advantage of it. But from our perspective and from Shell, when you report it to us, we try, like I said, fraud protection and keeping your account safe is a five. It's a way to provide member service, right? So by us actually tracking down these individuals and assisting law enforcement with some of these investigations, right? When we package it together and we give it to law enforcement, they actually go out there and arrest these people,
Hmm.
right? You just had a case where one guy he's facing some years in prison because
Hmm.
he decided to target, us. And I think it's important that they know that if they come, right, they're gonna come, but if they come, that Shell Federal Credit Union is going to do whatever it takes to make sure that we catch these people and that we put a stop to it.
Awesome.
And it's all about staying, 3, 5 steps ahead.
Yeah.
We can't stop off rock, right? We're not robots, and unfortunately, there's just so much. So we can't,
Hmm.
just like in any industry, it's a lot. But if we can stay ahead of them, and especially for our members, educate them, give them information to say, hey, slow down, right? Give us a call. Even one member that we can protect, 2 members, 3 members, I think goes a long way.
I love that. I agree, and that makes me feel rest assured too. Just knowing that y'all are out there trying to prevent as much as possible. Last question: do fraudsters usually target older members more, or are younger members getting scammed just as often?
So I think that fraudsters target everybody. Now you see older members getting scammed, a good piece because older members typically retire. Their accounts are a little bit inflated, right? They have the years of hard work in their retirements, their Social Security that's coming in. So fraudsters like those accounts because they can go in there in one swoop and take most of that money. Now, from a younger perspective, right? Younger people, you're starting off, you're starting to go to college, you're looking to buy a house, so you're out there trying to grasp every opportunity that comes your way.
Yeah.
So they target that psychological effect of, hey, you want to make $5,000 pretty quick. A young individual says, absolutely,
Yeah.
what do I have to do? Just deposit this cash. So a lot of the fraud that happens is not because people are bad people or they have bad intentions. It's simply because there's an opportunity there, and I think that fraudsters take advantage of that. So
Mm.
you see it on both sides.
Okay, awesome. Well, that is going to wrap us up for today. This has been so enlightening. Rodrigo, do you have any last thoughts that you would like to add at the end here as we wrap up?
Absolutely. No, thank you, Audrey. And it's been fun. Anytime that we get an opportunity to talk about, you know, what we can do and what we can share to protect our members, I think it's important. But more than anything, I think it's, our goal at Shell Federal Credit Union from a fraud perspective is to provide the best member service that we can. And, rest assured that, the team I have is amazing, but overall the institution, because it's not just the fraud team, right? It's not just the fraud team working from you. It starts from the teller line. It starts from the tellers that, when you come in and you say hello to them, right? They are out there looking for things and protecting your accounts. And I think we all work very well together to make that happen. So just, sharing with the membership that, we appreciate your business. We thank you for trusting us in housing your accounts here, and that it doesn't matter if it's, Monday through Sunday, Sunday through right Monday, we are going to do our best to make sure that your account is protected. And whether it's in the morning or at night, right? Please rest assured that we are staying up to date with the trends. We are investing heavily on making sure that your accounts are protected. And slow down, right? Give us a call, because it doesn't matter if it's small. It doesn't matter if you think it, maybe this isn't, maybe this is. Give us a call, right? We will make sure that we use our resources to help you in staying protected. So that's our guarantee from Shell, from fraud department to everybody out there. And whatever it is, reach out.
Awesome. Yeah. We hope that you walk away with a lot of really good information and you feel more empowered to recognize potential signs that, a fraudster may be trying to get your money and have more, resources available to protect your own money. Remember, if you ever feel like anything is suspicious, always give us a call here at Shell FCU. And also, I just want to also point out that we have a lot of educational resources on our website, shellfcu.org. We have a great financial wellness center with a lot of educational resources about a whole bunch of different topics, but it does also to go and talk about like fraud and stuff like that as well for further information. Thank you all so much for being here. I hope y'all had a great time with us today. I had a great time talking with you. Thank you so much. And we will see y'all in our next webinar. Bye, everybody.